Try not to fall for make-believe, but this is something else. I better be careful, you're beautiful, and I'm going down.
Hey, good evening, everybody. We're back for another edition of Meteorology Lab. Took a break last night, and we're back to looking at storms. And this is what we had today. Round 2, pretty cool cloud motions there. That's looking to the south, and you can see pretty rapidly we get the development of a pretty significant downdraft there. And that's the time lapse. Spent about an hour and 15 minutes trying to get that rendered. So, but that was pretty spectacular there. Cloud motions there were a little bit faster than I was expecting. And at this point, we've just got residual downdraft air, and we've got a temperature of 72, very cold for this time of the year. And the surface charts look like this. Not like that. Like that. Yeah, you can see we're under a bit of a meso-high. MCSs have pretty much spread all the way down into the Huntsville to Lufkin area. They've been gradually working southward during the afternoon, leaving a bit of a cold pool back behind them. Other storms in the Abilene area, and you can see a very well-defined outflow boundary here from about San Angelo up to Midland. So a lot of outflow air production, and that's left a meso-high right here, eastern Texas to the Big Country, and also in Louisiana. Temperatures in Louisiana also very cool. Let me see if I can pull up a map here. In fact, let me go to the Aviation Weather Center. This is one place where you can get current weather charts. And what we'll do is we'll pick the METAR plot right there, and I kind of prefer these regional plots. So we'll bring up Austin, and this will give us a current chart, and you can see the very cool temperatures. And the coldest readings that I'm seeing, about 72 at Jacksonville, and 73 all the way back towards western Louisiana. And this is very important because the temperature tells you a lot about the outflow production as far as the extent and depth and intensity of the cold pool, and that has a bearing on the next day's weather. If you're generating a lot of cold pools that are very persistent, then you're going to have good boundaries for the next day's convection. So that right there is going to be the outflow boundary. It looks like it kind of extends up into the Red River area, maybe something like this. You can see from Durant to Atoka, very strong difference. South of that, we've got winds gusting to 28. Right here along the Red River, and a lot warmer and weaker winds north of this boundary. Okay, so that's how it looks right there in the center of the meso-high, kind of in this area, and then the ridge extends on off into the I-20 area. So that's going to be the big question for tomorrow. I don't think the pattern's going to change a whole lot, so we're going to have this boundary somewhere in this area. And what happens overnight with that will depend. That will tell us where we're going to have convection tomorrow. Elsewhere around the country, you've got this enhanced area south of Minneapolis. This is more under the influence of prevailing westerlies. So this is more of a jet stream type environment. Whereas down here in Texas, mostly just outflow boundaries and cold pools. It looks like we've got a bit of a monsoon starting up in the Intermountain region and the Rockies. Surprised to see it this far north. That usually doesn't really kick into about August or September. But yeah, there it is, and we've even got a marginal risk around the Ajo area. Okay, yeah, I was looking at satellite data for the Arctic area, and you can see a lot of smoke up there in the Northwest Territories right here. And this is the Arctic Ocean, and up here you can see the ice pack. There it is right there. And before I get too much further, I better check and make sure that the audio and everything is running fine. We've got the our regular listeners here, Ron Chalfant and Justin Pulliam. Sarah Wood made it back in after a busy week. Yep, severe weather possible in that area. Ryan says hot in South Florida, 102 heat index. Brol H and Southern Rebel are here. Lloyd McCarter says, good evening. Arkansas continues to be the recipient of frequent storms like Saturdays. Thomas Copeland also here. Eddie W. saying he's on the enhanced risk edge of that area there in eastern Iowa. Megan John's got a tornado watch until 1 in the morning there in Minnesota. Ryan says whoever invented AC should receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah, I sometimes wonder here in this part of Texas how anybody made it through these summers, because they are just brutal. However, one thing that I learned living for a while in the Philippines and was that, you kind of get acclimated to the heat if you're forced to be in it for a while. So I think after a while, it just doesn't really register. Megan John watching the storms building from his deck. Insane structure. Mike Estwick also joining us. Mr. Manlet, tornado warning for Stevens and Swift counties in western Minnesota. And we've also got supercells in Alberta. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that in a little shortly. And that's what the environment looked like over Alberta earlier today. And what I'm seeing from this right here, you see all this banded altocumulus over the northern Rockies right there. That's telling us that we've got a little bit of jet stream energy probably crossing directly across the mountain ranges. So we're getting these waves that are appearing there. And we've probably got a bit of a dry line, maybe out in the Calgary area up to Valley View. So we're going to pull up the radar for that in a second. Ryan's got, he's seeing severe warnings posted for the Midwest. Mick in Australia there. And we've got Mike Estwick too. 20 Celsius, 68 Fahrenheit there in Australia. And let's see here. Lost my place there. Justin Pulliam playing with digital atmosphere. Quite a temperature gradient around San Antonio. 78 to 92, indeed. Sarah Wood also here. And Carl Burkhoff. Dwayne Ward also. Low dew points there in Maryland. And they've had kind of a cold pattern there in that part of the country. And that's because we've had a very strong Hudson Bay vortex. And I think I had a chart for that. Yeah, let me go over here. Yeah, you can see this big spiral band right there over the Hudson Bay. Coral Harbor, which is a station, weather station located right there. So they're in close proximity to the eye of this thing. And this is kind of a big occluded system just kind of spiraling around. And let me see if I can bring up digital atmosphere. Look at the conditions in the middle of that low pressure area. So you can see kind of a convergent spiral appearance to the wind field right there. So that's that big cyclone in the middle of the Hudson Bay region. Very cool temperatures on both sides, either side of that low pressure area. So that's telling us that that is a fairly barotropic system. That's kind of what we call a decaying occlusion. And then we go further to the west, and that's where we really pick up this heat wave, and it's been going on for a few days now. And you remember we were seeing temperatures up near 90 in the McKenzie River area of Northwest Territories. Still going on there. We've got 86 there at Norman Wells. And yeah, just pretty much very warm weather all the way up. Alaska has cooled down a little bit though. So we're seeing 60s and 70s. But where we've really got the heat is down here in the lower 48. Let me bring up the plots here real quick. And there we go. We had 110 degrees at Philipsburg, which is, I believe, that station right there. They're down 105 the past hour. So very hot weather in this region right there. And even down in Kansas, looks like some fairly warm temperatures. But down in Texas, we've got the moisture and the outflow boundaries, and there's the edge of that cold pool right there, maybe something like this here. So north of that, 70s and low 80s. This is a look at what things look like early over Texas, and one thing that you'll notice is a difference in the characteristics between the cloud field in South Texas, where you have cloud streets. In fact, let me zoom that in, and you can really take a look at those cloud streets. They're just kind of aligned with the low-level flow. And then you get significantly north of that area, and you start picking up the outflow boundary. And that's what we had around noon before things really blew up. And you can kind of see a northern edge of that around Oklahoma City. So you can see kind of bubble textures on the edge right there. So this is kind of like the start of the meso-high that affected us later during the day, and it just kind of expanded as thunderstorms got underway in North Texas and Northeast Texas. Okay, 250 millibar flow showing the very strong ridge right over that heat wave in the Northwest Territories. So pretty much where you find the ridge, that's where the warm weather is. We've had 95 degrees at Cardston there in southern Alberta, and 98 just across the border, and then of course 110 degree air across South Dakota. And you can see that they're not quite underneath the ridge, but they're probably getting subsidence. There's probably maybe some short waves working through the flow, and ahead of shortwave ridges you're going to get subsidence. So most likely that's what's going on there, plus a little bit of downslope flow. And by downslope, well, I'm not seeing it so much right now, but earlier I saw the flow more northwest across South Dakota, and so you're getting adiabatic heating in addition to the compressional warming. So there, 107, that's where you get a little bit of the downslope air. 102, definitely downslope air. So there you go. And that's a closer look at things, and you also see the disturbed upper level flow where we have the thunderstorms in Texas. So the individual storms, there's so many of them that they're beginning to have an impact on the flow aloft. So starting to get kind of a meso-scale reflection in the upper levels. And you can see it right there with that trough at 500 millibars, and also the cooler temperatures. You see -8 right here at Fort Worth and Shreveport. Yeah, -8 there at Little Rock. So that's a cold pool aloft at 500 millibars here. This is 18,000 feet. So what does a cold pool at 500 millibars mean? Well, I can show that to you on the sounding. Sounding for Fort Worth this morning is looking like this. And what do we see right here? We see very steep lapse rates and tropical air, because we've got a lot of moisture all the way up and down the column. Steep lapse rates, and those are being caused not by low-level heating, nothing down here, but the cool mid-level temperatures there. So -8 right there. Yeah, at 500 millibars, and the bulk of the cold air is actually at about 600 millibars. So that's helping to give us kind of like a depressed thickness value, and consequently we have troughing aloft because of that lower thickness. And there you can see it. There's a little bit of that thickness troughing across Texas, and that's a reflection of the cool mid-level conditions. And then we see the big ridge across the Rocky Mountain region right there. So where are our fronts located? Well, we've got a low pressure area right there in South Dakota. It looks like we've got maybe a front across the Dakotas because of this thickness pattern here. So maybe something like this, kind of extending northwest. And then on the other side, we've likely got a warm front across Iowa like this. And then in the center of that, there's the low pressure area. Then elsewhere, we do have sort of a front across Texas, but that's more of a mesoscale feature. We can still draw it in. And since it's kind of mesoscale, I've got kind of a broken line here to kind of signify that. And it also looks like we've got a frontal system either in British Columbia or in the Pacific Northwest. Very cool air mass working on shore in southeast Alaska right here. Very low thickness. So somewhere in between, we're going to have a front, and it's hard to say initially, but maybe something like this, possibly extending down into Oregon like that. So that's another cold air mass coming on shore. And so we do have weather in between there in Alberta, and we'll start out taking a look at the surface chart for Alberta. This will give us an idea what kind of pattern we've got, and we've got upslope flow, and this is very similar to what we have in June and July in Colorado, when we get very moist conditions work into higher elevations. And in this case here, we can see some very high dew points. 63 there at, I think that's Edmonton is somewhere in this area. I want to say that's probably Valley View right there. And then, yeah, 64 here, 67. Those are very high dew points for that part of the country. And then I think in between we've got somewhat of a dry line feature, maybe something like that. Yeah, definitely. You see this 41 here, downslope, and we've probably got a lot of the same ingredients that we get in Texas taking place in Alberta. Probably heating in the higher terrain, 90-degree temperatures in this area. Those advect over in the form of an elevated mixed layer in the mid-levels, and we end up with capping. So let me see if I can bring up the radar for Alberta, and I have to use the iPad. I have to use radar scope because I don't know of any way to get Canadian radar using GR level 2 or 3. Okay, so I'll turn on AirPlay. If this causes any buffering problems, just let me know. Okay, let me bring up the X-Mirage, and then you'll be able to check out the radar there. Oh, it came up automatically. All right. So we are looking at Canadian radar. I'm trying to resize the window so this fits, and doesn't look like it wants to scale there, but anyway, there's our storms right there, and you can see a little bit of a supercellular type structure. Let me see if I can okay, yeah, that works right there. So Edmonton, located right here. And let me go south a little bit, and we pick up more storms in the Calgary area. I'm going to go to a long-range radar, and yeah, you can see right there, got a very classic supercell look, and that's going to be just west of Olds, southwest of Red Deer, and that's where they had a very, I want to say that was in '87 where they had a very severe storm there. Edmonton got hit with a big tornado there. I think that was August 1st of '87, and then there was another big cell further down the line. And then I'll try to look at base velocity here. The range doesn't go out that far, but we do get useful information because you can see the wind field aloft without having to even use your radiosondes. All you have to do is find the zero line, start at where the radar site is, and then kind of trace the zero line. So we get kind of like a S shape. And this is telling us that we've got southeasterly flow in the low levels, becoming southerly aloft. So there's a little directional shear in the environment. So anytime you have kind of an S shape around the radar, that's telling you you have directional shear. And then speed shear would be represented by a very strong difference in the colors between inbound and outbound. And with just pure speed shear, the zero line is going to be pretty straight right there. So in this case, it looks like we do have some speed shear as well as directional shear. And let's try comparing that with the other radar site further up north. Go to the Edmonton radar. I don't know the exact name right there, but the radar site located right in the center, and we trace the zero line, and we see a little bit of disruption. It's not quite symmetrical, is it? So this is kind of showing us what we have going on is we've got the directional turning west of the radar, but it's more of a straight line flow on the other side of the radar. So we can kind of pick out important mesoscale details like this, like differences on either side of the radar in the environment. So asymmetry is what will kind of show you that there's changes across horizontal distance. And then out here we pick up what looks like the storm anvil, and that's kind of interfering with the environmental profile. And I guess while we're at it, we could probably take a look at maybe a U.S. site. There you can see all the Canadian radars. Actually, for some reason the Canadian radars aren't showing. I can see them on my iPad, but not on the preview. But let me bring up the Minneapolis radar using radar scope here. I've already talked to Weather Decision Technologies about doing a special segment on radar scope, and we're going to do probably a special program maybe in the next couple of weeks and show you how to get around in this program. And this is my preferred tool on both Android and iOS. A lot of chasers use this out in the field, and gives you a lot of the same products you have there in JR Level 2 and 3. So what do we got going on? We've got, looks like northwest flow storms across the Minnesota region. And you can see the lightning, lots of cloud ground lightning in these storms. And then we've got our main severe storm in western Minnesota out there near the edge. So it's got a pretty classic northwest flow structure. So a lot of the rain-free bases are on the west side of the storm instead of the south side of the storm. And so there's our little hook signature right there. And that's pretty much tracking parallel with that interstate right there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and be done with that, and let me get back to the charts. All right, very good. Okay, we've gone through the soundings, and we haven't quite done radar or satellite yet, have we? We've done the polar orbiters, but I haven't shown you the visible. Yeah, so that's the picture we have across Texas this evening, and you can see the outflow boundary there in West Texas racing southwestward. So I think we're going to find this somewhere in the Austin, Houston area tomorrow, It could drift back northward overnight, but I think we're going to have another round possible tomorrow. And you can see all the other activity there in the Rockies and then up in the northern plains. We pick out some of those storms going up there in western Minnesota. All right. So let's see what we've got in the forecast for the next 24 to 48 hours. Here's the high-resolution rapid refresh model here. Starting out, 23Z, 0Z, what is it, 0Z? Yeah, 01Z right there. So there's the initial chart right there, showing kind of a large cluster of storms. And then what we're looking for overnight is very strongly diurnal signature there. So the storms are pretty much gone by midnight. And then nothing happening overnight except across the Gulf. We get some nocturnal development just off the coast, very typical for this time of year. And we end up with an MCS out here that could cause a little bit of a problem with the moisture out in the Sabine River region. But I think we're primed for more storms in central Texas for tomorrow. Here's kind of a rare look at weather in Canada. This is the RDPS. This is kind of the Canadian version of the NAM model. It's kind of their own model package. So starting out right now, you can see the storms right there in the Edmonton area going up. Model pretty much nailed that right there. And we also see the push of cold air. See, there's the cold pool right there across Ketchikan, Juneau, Prince Rupert coming on shore. Very strong pressure difference in this area here. The warmer air located to the northwest. So somewhere in between we've got the cold front, and I think that is configured something like this. So it's basically gradually working its way over the mountain ranges there, approaching Alberta and Northwest Territories. And then for the next 48 hours, look at that, a little bit of snow in the higher elevations there near Fort Nelson. Some thunderstorms there too. So if you're traveling the Alaska Highway, it should be some interesting weather. And then the cold air kind of overspreads most of the British Columbia, Alberta area. You can see our thickness gradients relax and move mostly eastward. So this is the cold air spreading in across the Rockies right there. Kind of ironic if you're living in the Northwest Territories, having cold air relief coming from the southwest instead of from the north. But indeed, that's what's happening here. Another big factor on the weather this time of year in July is the upper level patterns. And I've gone all the way up to 200 millibars. This is up at 39,000 feet. And the two things I'm looking at mostly here are the jet stream isotachs. Those are the wind velocity values. And I'm also looking at the actual wind plots, trying to find little areas of troughing, upper level lows, upper level highs, and things like that. So we start out with this northwesterly flow. And then in Texas, you see kind of like the disturbed sort of troughing appearance here. This is from all the convection we've had over the past few days. And then the general trend over the next week, by the time we get up to Monday and Tuesday, looks like kind of a weak trough coming in from the northwest. And then that other trough that we've had looks like it's kind of shifted slowly southward to South Texas. So maybe a little bit of a southward movement in this outflow boundary type generated storm stuff. Okay, then by Tuesday and Wednesday, Looks like a little bit of an upper level high across Oklahoma, so that'll probably shut Oklahoma down. Then we've got low pressure area in the San Antonio region, and you can kind of see the counterclockwise flow there. That's cyclonic turning in this area. So this is probably reflecting thunderstorms and showers in that part of Texas. Then going into Thursday and Friday, we've got upper level high across Missouri and Tennessee. That's centered about right here. So this means later in the week we're going to have a lot of very warm weather in the Midwest. And probably very little precipitation. That'll be confined mostly to the areas around this jet stream here. We've got easterly flow across the Gulf Coast region, so it's got a very tropical appearance, and it looks like that troughing has shifted eastward or westward. There's that low right there moving into the Big Bend area, so maybe the convection is following that path. But one big thing that we see here, a huge amount of upper level ridging across the western U.S., and that should keep the precip a little bit dampened. We see a little bit of amplification of the troughing or the ridging in this region, so maybe a lot of warm weather again for Montana and Alberta. We get another trough coming down about a week from now. You can see it coming down Monday right in this area here. So a little bit of the prevailing westerly starting to break things up in the Midwest. And then we get this very large trough here. So looks like something kind of big going on in here. Maybe a little bit of a backdoor front moving through. And then we see what looks like a tropical system making landfall here. GFS going for some sort of hurricane landfall, and we see this reflected as a upper level low. Yeah, surprisingly, these hurricanes, they should start showing upper level highs like when you get to the top of the troposphere. In this case, it's showing a low pressure area instead. And then another chart that I like to look at a lot is the precipitable water. So we start out with a chart like this, and we've got 2-inch totals across East Texas. So the broad scale picture, not looking at small scale details, but the big picture across hundreds of miles, we've got southerly flow basically working up through the Central Plains right there. So that should drive most of the precipitable water slowly northward and just kind of keep that plume going. And we see that with this pressure gradient here, some of it works up into the Illinois and Indiana area around Monday. But the moisture keeps coming northward with that southerly gradient. And then just a general trend, we continue the high precipitable water in the southern U.S. So probably lots of opportunities here for rain over the next week and a half. And then we see this looks like cool air pushing through the Midwest around next Tuesday and Wednesday. So that's going to be the weather change that is linked with that upper level trough that I showed you earlier. So yeah, that's going to be a bit of a backdoor front coming into Texas, Arkansas, and Tennessee there. And you can see that the patterns are moving north to south across a lot of the central U.S. there. So we're going to have kind of a mild pattern here over the next week to 2 weeks. And yeah, you can see here, GFS wants to bring a hurricane onshore in the Carolinas. Let me go back. There it is in the Bahamas. Makes landfall around Wilmington. But this is 312 hours out, so we're probably going to see a big change with that. Probably going to see the models just kind of waffling on that for a while. And the tropics have been pretty hostile to hurricane formation, so we may not even get anything. Okay, and then we'll wrap up the forecast with this right here. We'll look at the dew points and the winds. So starting out tonight, you can see that the model does not really resolve the mesoscale outflow boundaries very well. I can kind of sort of see them if I try to use my imagination. So they kind of show up in that region, and you get that kind of popcorn look to the moisture field. So that's indicating cells in that area. It's probably a better indicator than wind and moisture on the GFS. Okay, then overnight, more moisture coming north. And then we get up to tomorrow evening. And you can see these popcorn appearances here. Looks like convection in East Texas once again. Got a little bit of dry air in West Texas, so maybe that'll keep things shut down west of I-35. A little bit of a moisture surge coming in for Tuesday, and then for Tuesday evening when we do the weathercast. Looks like maybe some convection there in northeast Texas once again. Got a little bit of a warm front, looks like working its way northward into Iowa. For Wednesday, more southerly flow dominating the picture. I can see probably a new front starting to come down through the plains right there. For Friday, not a whole lot of change. Still looks like a boundary up in central U.S. right there. So I think we're probably going to have some chances for thunderstorms there in Iowa and Nebraska. Some pretty good cyclogenesis right there in Kansas over the weekend. Lots of popcorn appearances right here in Arkansas, so it looks pretty rainy next weekend for Arkansas and Memphis there. And then we see that kind of drive south for Sunday. There's that popcorn field right there, indicating convection working south. And that is along the cold front. Right through there. See that northerly flow north of that, and that troughing in this area, or I'm sorry, this ridging in this area. That's the cool air coming southward. So you can see that pushes all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico by Monday and Tuesday next week. Or, what is it, Sunday? Yeah, that would be next week. And a lot of dry air across the central and Great Lakes region of the U.S. And for Wednesday and Thursday, there comes that hurricane indication right there, so we'll just have to keep an eye on the Gulf. High pressure otherwise dominating the Midwest, pushing cold air southward, so it looks like a lot of cool nights and dry days. So it's a very mild pattern for this time of year. Normally we've got the temperatures going up to 95, 100 degrees this time of year with very boring weather. I know when we did the webcast last July, it was just like very boring weather, clear skies, and there just wasn't much to see on the time lapse. So yeah, this is definitely a welcome change. And then this is just a quick look at the tropics. So we've got Hurricane Eugene south of Baja California there with 115 knot sustained winds. So that's a Cat 3 storm. That's going to be tracking northwestward. Sometimes these will approach the California coast, but in this case, looks like that'll stay pretty much out to sea. And then for the Atlantic and Caribbean, we've got this wave now starting to come off the Alaska coast, Cape Verde right there, and approaching, I guess that would be the Windward Islands right there. So that's probably what the GFS is going for, developing something in that region and moving it right up to the Carolinas. Okay, there's been a whole lot of chat here, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to go through all this, but I'm going to copy that to my clipboard right now so I can look at all this after we go off the air. But just looking at random chat in here very briefly. Carl Berghoff mentioning tennis ball sized hail in Mille Lacs County, Minnesota. Hiker there seeing sprinkles in Tucson. Yeah, that's definitely very good. Ryan commenting on radar scope right there and supporting the idea of a radar scope seminar. And little discussion there about lightning photos and photography. So, yeah, chat very busy. Anyway, I think that's about all I got for this evening. I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll be back tomorrow. Thanks, and have a good evening.
you.